Hello everybody, Mannix here. Got another gun review for you right here, right now. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun videos, and feel free to support me on Patreon, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get right into this. The infamous Taurus Judge. This one happens to be the Magnum variety. Taurus Judge Magnum. You can get this in the matte silver you're seeing right here, or the matte black. If you're not familiar, the Taurus Judge is a line of revolvers that accepts both the .45 long Colt as well as the .410 shotgun round. So in a way, it's both a hand shotgun as well as a .45 long Colt revolver. If you're not familiar with the .45 long Colt, it's an older fashioned round, been around for a long time. Very, very polarizing in how powerful those things can be. Their ballistics are all over the place depending on what brand you get, but generally speaking, a normal .45 long Colt ballistically performs pretty similarly to a .45 ACP. That's a very, very short answer to that. So you can think of it like a .45 ACP revolver if you're trying to get into a basic understanding of its ballistics. And on top of that, you can fire the .410 shells. Now, it separates the Magnum over the regular Judges, whether it's the standard Judge or the Judge Public Defender, the Public Defender Poly. This one has an even longer chamber. Now, if you thought the chambers on the Judges were already elongated enough, well, we're up an extra ½ an inch on this guy. So instead of only accepting 2.5 inch .410 shells, this guy can also accept 3-inch .410 shells. Let's get the specs out of the way real quick. Retails at $619.99 US dollars. Has a 5-round capacity, fiber optic front sight, fixed rear sight, 3-inch barrel length. Overall length is 9.5 inches. Its overall height 5.1 inches, and its overall width 1.5 inches. Its weight is 37 ounces unloaded. You can get these for about $500 at most gun stores. Sometimes I've seen them for like $520. Sometimes I see them as low as $480. Not a bad deal at all. Like most Taurus revolvers and Taurus handguns in general, they're very, very good deals. First of all, I think it looks really cool. Yeah, some people think these are goofy just because how long those cylinders are. There's even massive, 500 Magnum revolvers often don't even have a cylinder this long, but it's to accept those 3-inch .410 shells. Never mind the 2.5 inches. Those are already long as they are. Now, not only can we accept the 3-inch as well as the 2.5 inch, but if you are firing 2.5 inch .410s out of here, or hell, even .45 long Colts, you still are going to reap a benefit of a longer overall chamber. So this compared directly to the regular Taurus Judge, aside from the Public Defender, which is kind of like the Judge snubby, but this compared to a regular standard Judge, the barrel length is the same. They both have 3-inch barrels. However, we're getting a ½ an inch longer chamber length, which means, again, even if you're firing a round that a regular Judge could also accept, you're still going to get that benefit of that extra ½ an inch chamber. It's kind of like increasing the barrel length. Not quite. It is a rifled barrel. The chamber is not rifled. As far as muzzle velocity is concerned, you're actually going to increase that by a little bit. It's almost like increasing the barrel by an extra ½ an inch. So take that for what it's worth as well. Even if you don't have any 3-inch shells lying around, you don't feel like using those for whatever reason, you don't even care, there's still an advantage to getting this gun. Not only that, it is heavier, obviously. We just have more material right here, more metal, which means less recoil. It's a little bit more expensive, and the advantage of it being heavier is also a disadvantage for carry. Now, before we get more into the nitty-gritties of the Judge Magnum, let's just talk about the Judges in general. Why would you go with these revolvers over, say, a .357 Magnum that would be a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter weight? Generally speaking, .410s are kind of wimpy out of these handguns. .410s do pretty well out of actual full-length shotguns, but when we shrink them down all the way to these guys, if you get any generic .410 shotgun shell, particularly bird shots, but even a lot of the buckshot varieties, they tend to just have, as far as the buckshots are concerned, okay ballistic performance, but they're a little bit unpredictable. They may scatter way too much. Oftentimes the shells flare up after you fire them in these things, and they can get stuck in the cylinder. They may not even allow them to move at all. Sometimes they work okay, sometimes they don't. Generic .410 shells, not actually designed for handguns, typically don't do very well out of these guys. If you are going to fire .410, I highly, highly recommend you get varieties designed for these. Hornady makes the triple defense shells, currently only in 2.5-inch variety, but we may get a 3-inch one day, who knows. Winchester makes their PDX ones in both 2.5 as well as 3-inch. Both of those would do well out of this guy. The best I've seen so far is the Federal buckshot. Those do excellent out of a handgun. Very, very devastating rounds. There's a couple other varieties floating around out there. If you're going to go with 410, get one of those. I would forego the slugs. I would forego the birdshot. If you're going to go with a slug, honestly, I would just go with a 45 long Colt round. I would not bother with the slugs. They're kind of like lightweight 40 Smith & Wessons. I just don't see why you would go with those out of a judge. You could if you had them lying around for whatever reason, you had no longer shotgun, or hell, let's say you had a whole bunch of 410 ammo and you have 410 shotguns. You just want to get a handgun mix into the collection. You want to make use of that ammo. That's another good reason to have a judge. But if you're going to pick from the ground up, 45 long Colt rounds and 410 designed for these 410 handguns are the only things I would honestly go with. That being said, if you go with either one of those things, the ballistic performance on those are actually pretty good. Some of them completely devastating. Now take those and throw them in this guy, the Magnum. All of a sudden, we're going to increase our velocity even more. And so if you were kind of iffy about some of those rounds, you thought, man, I don't know if they penetrate enough, or I don't know if they're consistent enough, look no further. If you fire them out of a Magnum judge, you eliminate pretty much all of those problems, says me. So because of that, personally, if you don't mind the extra 1/2 inch of length, I would honestly just go with a Magnum over a regular judge. Even if you're not going to be using the 3-inch shells, I still think getting that extra velocity helps a lot, because again, a lot of those 410 rounds just don't do all that great out of judges in general, even the Smith & Wesson Governor. But out of this guy, just pushing them just a little bit more, it compensates for a lot of the weakness we see in some of those 410 rounds. Now, once again, why a 410 handgun? Why would you go with this? It all comes down to having the capability of firing multiple projectiles out of any gun, which is the exact reason you get a shotgun over a rifle, but out of a handgun. What if you wanted to be able to carry this? Snap caps, by the way, 45 long Colt. Anti-carjacking gun, home defense handgun, all the advantages a shotgun has over a rifle. That's pretty much what you're getting, except in handgun form. You're comparing this directly to another revolver that only fires one projectile at a time. If you get those Federal 410s, maybe you want 3-4 projectiles going out at once. Some of them have very nice tight spreads. Those Winchester PDX-1 Defenders, those BBs, man, they spread a crap ton. If you just want to cover a whole bunch of surface area, if you're in a very dark environment, it's the middle of the night in your house, can't see very well, all that filler, all of those extra projectiles can absolutely compensate for errors like that. Maybe you're in a very rural area, you're out about in the woods. Honestly, if I had a good 410, I think I'd pick that over any single bullet. Of all handguns, honestly, I would pick this one for home defense. Handguns for home defense. Very, very specific criteria right there. My pick for home defense is an actual shotgun. Keltec KS7 as well as a Mossberg 590 Shockwave are my top 2 picks. There's a lot of great shotguns out there, but those ones I particularly like because they're so short. But if I wanted to go even shorter, even smaller, this is the one I would pick, the Taurus Judge Magnum. For whatever reason, if you want a home defense handgun, I think this is the one to go with. You're just covering way more surface area if you're firing 410 shotgun shells. The double action pull on this is actually really nice. It's much more crisp, much more easy than my Public Defender Poly. That one, for whatever reason, has a much harder trigger pull. But despite having such a large cylinder right here, it actually fires very well, even in double action. I'm very, very surprised. But of course, you can still fire single action, which I would normally do out of a gun like this. Love that fiber optic on there. It's just beautiful. I'm a sucker for fiber optics. I like the way it looks. This grip right here is excellent. This is my favorite grip from Taurus. It's rubberized, but it's very, very dense, very, very comfortable. I like how rounded it is right here. Like the little lip we have for our thumb right there. Trigger pull is A-okay. Double action. It's still pretty rough, but not as bad as the Public Defender Poly, ironically. Single action is very good. I've had no issues with this. It's a revolver, very difficult to dick up, such a tried and true classic design. No issues with ejecting the shells. And on top of all of that, these things are totally affordable. Again, around $500. Really, really powerful, devastating revolvers. They're going to be even better at closer range. Maybe you don't want to fire more than one time. Yeah, we only have a 5-round capacity, but it's not that much lower than a lot of other revolvers out there. Best case, usually a revolver around this size would get you maybe 7. But again, you get a good buckshot in there from Federal or something like that. Within just a couple feet from someone, you fire. They are going down, eating all of those projectiles, the Winchester PDX-1s, even those Hornady triple defense. They all are going to do very, very well close range. And then if you're medium range, you got a little bit of extra projectiles there, more likely to hit them at least with something rather than missing flat out if your adrenaline's going, if it's really dark, etc. Anti-carjacking, you just want a point-blank handgun. Look no further. Any judge will do for that. And on top of all that, I like the variety we have here. So even if you don't like one thing or the other, you can do multiple things with these guns, the 410 or the 45 long Colt. Now, if you do get a good birdshot round that won't flare up on you, you're gonna have to do your research, but that can be very good for an anti-snake gun, rabid animal, small game. Almost impossible to miss with those suckers. If you're willing to spend the extra 40, 50 bucks, whatever it is, and get a Magnum over a regular judge, honestly, I think that's worth it. Even if you don't go with the 3-inch shells, I still think getting that extra distance really helps compensate for some of the weakness some of the 410 rounds have, or really just helping them out as much as we possibly can. It's just a little bit heavier, it's just a little bit longer, but personally, I think this is the one to go with. Your mileage may vary. And directly comparing this to all of the other judges, for a home defense handgun, you're not even worrying about carrying it, and for whatever reason you want a home defense handgun, Taurus Judge Magnum, hands down. Really, really cool handgun that actually is totally functional. Thank you so much for watching. Did I miss any advantages and or disadvantages about the Judge Magnum? Please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Mannix out.